were pretty looking people, but I can tell you people, they were the devil's children.
Greetings from Castle Goring from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. I will now plunge in with no preamble beyond this and pick up back the other 46 or 47 lies and points that I have to make that I ran out of time with. So, without further ado, lie number 21 is Meghan claims the media were out to destroy her, no matter how good I was. Poor baby girl. I mean, that, of course, is paranoia in action. Because the media were not trying to destroy her. They were trying to prevent her from destroying herself, which she has successfully done. Because they actually thought that at first, if you remember, everybody thought how wonderful it was to have her in the royal family. And then when it became apparent that things weren't going well, people tried to get her to abide by the protocols. But she wasn't interested. But the media were certainly never out to destroy her, no matter how good she was. Does she think that she's a grande horizontale who's been rated on her performance by her sponsor? Because that's really how it would appear that her thinking would lead one down such treacherous paths. How good she was. What was good about marching, trying to make money out of the royal family, having a bigger clothes allowance than every single other queen, duchess, royal, princess in the whole of Europe collectively put together? Good. And also, let's remember, at first everybody thought, at least in the press, thought that she was really rather good news. Line number 22. The location of the proposal has changed. In the engagement interview, Harry told Michelle Hussein that he proposed in the kitchen during a standard, typical night in their cottage at Kensington Palace, with Meghan recalling, "We were just roasting chicken." There we go again, roast chicken. Oh. We were just roasting chicken, trying to roast a chicken. And it just was an amazing surprise. It was so sweet and natural and very romantic. He got on one knee. She added, "As a matter of fact, I could barely let you finish proposing. I said, 'Can I say yes now?'" Oh dear, oh dear. Line number 23, because I don't have time to comment on all of them. I mean, it's so preposterous. It's now in the backyard, but they love backyards, if you remember. It's now in the backyard, but before it was in the kitchen. Line number 23. She pretty much asserts that Catherine and William are cold and formal and uptight. However, in the BBC engagement interview, they said that everyone had been wonderful. I mean, I'm going to quote. Meghan called her sister-in-law to be wonderful. Harry said both William and Catherine had been amazing. And then we get a revelation. And then William was longing to meet her, and so was Catherine. So, being our neighbours, we managed to get that in a couple of, quite a few times now. And Catherine has been absolutely amazing, as has William as well. Fantastic support. And Meghan interjected, she's been wonderful. Harry said, the family together have been absolutely, a solid support, and my grandparents as well have been wonderful throughout this whole process, and they've known for quite some time. How does that accord with we met, I had on torn jeans and no shoes, and the uptight bitch didn't want me to cuddle her because I'm a hugger and she's a cold fish, because that's the message that they were delivering this time around. Lie 24. Harry makes a swipe at his male relations, primarily his brother. But it doesn't add up, because he says that the male members of his family especially marry not really by using their heart, but by using their head. And they choose women who will fit the mold. We'll get back to that in a little while, because that is an arrant lie, completely disproven by who has married whom, and not only on the male side either. Lie number 25. Meghan and Doria both make out that Doria had primary care of Meghan from the age of 2. However, for over 10 years, her father was the primary caregiver. She said it repeatedly on the TIG and elsewhere. Now Doria and Meghan are trying to peddle the lie that Thomas was a sort of deadbeat, practically never there parent. She's the one who was practically never there. Gigi Perot told me that she only ever met Meghan's mother once, and that was when Meghan was graduating. Meghan's mother never came to the school. Now, was that because she was unavailable by absence elsewhere, as some people would like to believe? Or was it that Meghan didn't want her mother of colour pitching up to spoil her lily-white ascent, because she was already on the trajectory upwards? Lie 26. She says that her father's phone was compromised when he was in the hospital having a heart attack, and she blames a mystery person for intercepting her father's phone and pretending that because he obviously was really peed off with her, as anybody would be, and called her Meghan instead of Meg, that meant that the phone was compromised, and so she could never phone him ever again. I mean, are we dumb? Well, Thomas Markle has confirmed to the world, and privately as well, he was in full charge of his phone, and nobody used that phone but him, and he's the one who sent the text. So she can lie till she's blue in the face. And she also claimed in the text that she had sent him over 20 messages and he responded saying he hadn't received any of them. Why, when she was coming up with showing the text messages, didn't she show the 20 text messages that she says she sent him? Mickey, do you think the reason why is because they don't exist? You're a clever girl, Mickey. Line number 26. Sorry, I've done line number 26. Line number 27. The suicide lie again. This rarely disturbs me, that this brazen hussy, this hustler, who clearly was beaming with delight when she was supposed to be suicidal, could have the unmitigated gall to keep on repeating something that is clearly untenable because her actions don't match up with her claims. I'm going to read something that Caroline Haig sent. Having had a sister-in-law who committed suicide in 2016 after many failed attempts, to hear me Ragland lie about her wanting to do the same makes me feel physically sick and causes me to shake with the dreadful memories. She has no idea of the subject. I couldn't agree more. This is my interjection. I know people who've committed suicide. And I myself was suicidal when I was a teenager. Meghan claiming she was suicidal to me is like Meghan claiming she was a victim of racial prejudice when she was passing for white the whole of her life and only got infuriated with the British press when they had the unmitigated gall to label her black. She has no idea of the subject, has not, in my opinion, experiences anywhere near the depression she claims to have gone through. During the time she claims to have felt so bad, she was immaculately turned out in heels, smiling and laughing at various events. I also have depression and can spend days without getting up, without showering, and care nothing for my appearance. She is offensive and insensitive, as is her dim-wit husband. Well, her dim-wit husband, my dear, is the one whom she had to dupe with that nonsense so that he would be terrified of losing her and that he would move to a community property state and make a whole load of money so that in the event of a divorce, or who knows, she might be really lucky, she might be a rich widow. She'd be able to cream it in. Line number 28. And that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I say that for legal reasons. But there's nothing that she has said or done that leads me to think that any other conclusion would be reasonable. Line number 28. In the same episode, Meghan tells interviewers that she felt a shift in treatment after moving to the UK. At that time, I wasn't thinking about how race played a part in any of this, she said. I genuinely didn't think about it. It's very different to be a minority, but not be treated as a minority right off the bat. I'd say now people are very aware of my race because they made it such an issue when I went to the UK. But before that, most people didn't treat me like a black woman. So that talk didn't happen for me. However, that is a lie because within a week of Meghan's exposure of the relationship with Harry, which was done in the Sunday Express. And my understanding is that the approach was actually assisted by friends of Meghan so that they wouldn't have just a quiet private relationship, because the pressure had to be put on Harry to commit to her. Remember, she was putting the pressure on. Every 2 weeks they had to get together. If he didn't know what she wanted, she played on his feelings and fears of abandonment. Well, they are the ones who got Jason North to issue a warning a week after their relationship became known. That race was the issue. Race was the issue. And that there were racist comments, etc. So, how does that square away with what she's claiming? They knew straight off the bat that if they played the race card, they would be able to jerk the chains of all those dogs who were yapping at their heels, possibly to speak the truth about Meghan's past. She knew it. Also, this nonsense about how race played a part in the rather adulatory story that was headed up with Straight Out of Compton line. Well, the author has said she lives near Compton or in Compton. Meghan's mother lives 5 or 6 miles outside of Compton. The article was adulatory. There was nothing racist about the comment. She was simply alluding to the fact that there's a very popular hit song called Straight Outta Compton. No racism was intended, and the article was positive. And I think somebody like Harrison Ford comes from Compton too. So it's not only black people that come from Compton. But everything has been twisted and turned by this couple to be racist. Anyway, I need to speed up. Line number 29. It touches on Britain's racist past and various scandals to have hit the firm in recent years, including Princess Michael of Kent's Blackamoor-style brooch. Well, Princess Michael of Kent was brought up in Africa partly. Her daughter's first boyfriend with her and Prince Michael's support was Indian. How racist is that? A Moretto Veneziano is a slang of racial inclusivity, not anything to do with snaring at black people. And for what it's worth also, you don't wear symbols that you find distasteful, nor do you have statues in your house that you find distasteful. You don't promote that which you hate in a positive way. It doesn't make sense. Also, the Moretto Veneziano that Princess Michael wore is possibly a representation of King Balthazar, who was one of the 3 kings, and the black king from the east who came following the magi. They were the 3 magi following the star to worship at Jesus's cradle. None of that seems to me to be very anti-black, but of course they spun it as anti-black. Lie. Harry says, in this family, sometimes you are part of the problem rather than part of the solution. there is a huge level of unconscious bias. The thing with unconscious bias is it is actually no one's fault. But once it has been pointed out or identified within yourself, you then need to make it right. Harry cannot say who the racist is in the royal family, except for himself. He's the only one who wore a Nazi uniform. He's the only one who referred to Pakistanis in a pejorative way, etc., etc., etc. I think Harry has swallowed whole Doria's racist lines that Meghan also has been polluted by and has swallowed. I think Doria has a massive chip on her shoulder. And I have to tell you, the family thinks that Doria was always undermining Meghan, using anti-race messages that were actually anything but anti-race. Line number 31. Harry claims that Thomas Markle would still be in a relationship with Meghan if it wasn't for him. I quote, "It's incredibly sad what happened. She had a father before this, and now she doesn't have a father. I shouldered that, because if Meg wasn't with me, her dad would still be her dad." Well, this comment is, first of all, it's factually inaccurate, because Thomas Markle is her father and will always be her father. And Harry doesn't seem to understand that just because he and Meghan declare she doesn't have a father anymore doesn't mean it's a fact. It's a lie, Harry. She still has a father. That's the first thing. You don't seem to understand that you can't override fact with your version of an event. Fact is fact. Thomas Markle is and will always be Meghan Markle's father, whether he, she, or you like it or not. That's the first thing. The second thing, and this to me is particularly perturbing, is when I was writing Harry and Meghan the Real story, I was approached by somebody of impeccable background on behalf of Harry to tell me that the reason why Meghan could no longer ever get back in touch with her father was that he used to interfere with her, and the word used was interfere. I went ballistic. I knew it wasn't true. I'd seen her blogs on the Working Actress or Working Girl or whatever it was called, and the Tig, praising her father to the skies. I knew that her father had attended the Thanksgiving dinner that Harry paid when he took a residence and created. He was in St. Lucia, and it was Doria, Meghan, and her father. So I knew that at that stage, Harry could not have believed or heard that any such thing was possible. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been paying for a Thanksgiving dinner with both her parents. And here we have Harry now saying, because if Meg wasn't with me, her dad would still be her dad. So that means that I was fed a deliberate lie that had I been naive enough and stupid enough to believe, I would have repeated it, and possibly Thomas Markle could have been even charged with a crime. That means that either the person who was Harry's emissary has made it all up, which I don't for a second believe, or then the other consequence is that Harry had to know that what I was being told was completely untrue. This is outrageous. This is such an abuse. It's an abuse of the truth. It's an abuse of me. It is an abuse of her father. I mean, the facts speak for themselves. Somewhere, Harry is lying and Meghan is lying in terms of her father. I feel defiled. I feel sullied. I feel absolutely repelled and repulsed that they could have tried to use me like that, and that they could misuse and abuse her father like that. And that tells me Harry is complicit. He is up to his hairline in all that muck and filth. And Harry, let me make myself very clear. The person who told me is very closely connected to one of your closest people. I'm not going to say more than that. I have no reason to doubt them. And if you feel that you are being defamed, because I'm actually not accusing you of having done it, I'm saying that I believe the person, but quite possibly there's something that I don't know about. But if what they told me is true, and I know they thought it was true, and let me make it clear, I stand by everything I say. I don't lie. And if you try to move against me, I will see you in a court of law. Because I have incontrovertible proof where this came from. Maybe you're innocent. Mickey, catch that flying pig. Because lie number 32 is Meghan accusing the Canadian police of not protecting her from stalkers. Meghan, of course, completely forgot to inform the viewing public that in her rental house, there is a maximum space in some of the houses for one car and in some for no cars. Everybody has to park their second car and some people have to park their first car on the street. The police said they were not stalkers. There were no paparazzi there. Meghan insists there were paparazzi there, in much the same way that she insisted that she is the person who got Dove, the Dove ad, pulled. Well, of course, we all know that's as true as all of the other rubbish that comes out of her mouth. Lie number 33. They give the impression that 888 Lilac Lane is their own house. We've already addressed that, so let's move on to line number 34. David Olugosa, the author of Black and British, says in the programme, and this is obviously with Meghan and Harry's complicity, because remember, this is a joint enterprise with Archewell, or as they will mispronounce it, Archewell. So Meghan and Harry have absolute responsibility for all the content in that show. He says, David Olugosa, who dreamed that Britain would have a black princess? Who could have conceived that? It was the conclusion to a history that was so improbable as to be astonishing. Mr. Olugosa, Meghan Markle does not identify herself as black. The biggest she stretches to is mixed race, when she doesn't put down Caucasian. Her problem was that she was outed by the British press as being black. It wasn't the colour of her skin that was the problem. It was her attitude to it. So, she's not black. She's cafe au lait. And she doesn't regard herself as black. Line number 35. According to Mr. Olugosa, the fact that slave owners were compensated to the tune of £20 million for their human property is often left out of history lessons, which he said is just another way in which our memory of British slavery has been airbrushed out of Britain's story. This, again, is twisting facts. Slaves were property. You had, if you were going to abolish slavery legally, you had to buy the slaves their freedom, which is what the British government did. It only paid off the debt, I think 7 years ago. It took nearly 2 centuries to pay off the debt. Slavery, Mr. Olugosa, I mean, I gather you regard yourself as something of a historian, but you seem to have failed to understand that all other civilizations at that time had slaves as well. Don't tell anybody. It wasn't only Britain. Line number 36. But do you see how race is being used mischievously by Netflix, Harry and Meghan, and their mouthpieces to lie to the American people and indeed to all viewers of Netflix, not only about Harry and Meghan, but about the role the royal family has played. It's unbelievable. Line number 36. The first 3 episodes contain a series of bobs that will upset Charles, because Harry claims he was, quote unquote, literally brought up by a second family in Africa, where he chose to spend 3-month stints in his late teens and 20s as he came to terms with his mother's death. When that's an outright lie, because Harry has previously said, as has William, that their father bent over backwards to pay them as much attention as he could. So Harry has now, just as how Meghan has airbrushed her father out, her father who for 10 years was her primary caregiver, who paid for her education, who did everything for her, paid for her apartments, paid for food, paid for petrol. He and his contributions have been airbrushed out by her, and Harry is now doing the same thing with his father. Problem is, both Meghan and Harry have previously said something else. So it shows they are liars. Line number 37. At the airport waiting for his flight, Harry reveals that he's just done, this was after Brexit, that he's just done his last stint of royal engagements. And then he says, what happened? And he makes it sound as if he is perplexed and he's a victim. But Harry and Meghan are the ones who left. They are the ones who thought that if they negotiated harshly and adversely, the Queen would allow them to be half in and half out. His perplexity is as if he's a victim of an attack or an accident, when in fact he and Meghan had been cooking up the whole thing from before their wedding. Why do you think Oprah was asked to the wedding? I now have chapter and verse on the fact that Harry and Meghan always intended to milk the system and maximize their profile, and from her point of view make as much money as possible off the back of their royal status. Lie 38. Harry says that the choice of the wives of his male relations has been from the head, not the heart. But then he says his decision to marry Meghan sets him apart from his family because his was from the heart and not because she would fit the mold. Well, heart is a 5-letter word, and I understand that what Harry has been thinking with has 4 letters. Mickey, what is this? What crowed thrice? Cock-a-doodle-doo! Line number 39. I think for so many people in the family, especially obviously the men, there can be a temptation or an urge to marry someone who would fit the mold as opposed to somebody who you perhaps are destined to be with. The difference between making decisions with your head or your heart, and my mum certainly made most of her decisions, if not all of them, from her heart, and I am my mother's son. Well, Diana didn't make all her decisions from her heart. She told Simon Berry, when they were discussing, before she even knew Charles properly, what she wanted to be when she grew up. She said, a dancer or the Princess of Wales. That, I'm afraid, is not the mark of somebody who uses their heart instead of their head. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that Diana was totally besotted with the Prince of Wales. There was always, once I knew the Diana story that she was besotted with Charles the man. And in fact, in the 2 books that I wrote about her, I made the point that the problem wasn't the Prince of Wales. It was that she wanted to alter Charles the man to fit her concept of what her husband should be. None of that tells me that Diana was leading with her heart. I think she was leading with her ambition. But Diana, being a romantic, talked herself into the fact that she was in love with Charles. And I have no doubt that she sincerely believed that she was in love with Charles. But I never saw any evidence of the fact ever that Diana was in love with Charles the man. I always saw evidence that she was in love with the Prince of Wales. This is a very important point to make. Harry is not like his mother. Harry is led by at least that which is below his neck. Let's put it that way. Whether it's his heart or a few spawns down is something else again. But it's definitely not his head. And as for the royal men marrying women who fitted the mould, the Duchess of Gloucester was married. She was a Danish secretary, and Prince Richard of Gloucester, as he then was, married her. It was a love match. Princess Michael of Kent's husband, it was a love match from his point of view. I've always thought she was rather like Diana and Meghan. I thought that her ambitions were such that she had to convince herself and everybody else that she was in love with the man. I've never seen any evidence of Princess Michael having been in love with Prince Michael, and I know an awful lot about them. I'm not going to say why and how and what I know, but believe me, our lives have overlapped considerably, and we have had many people in our lives in common. And I know things about that marriage, and I can tell you something. There is no doubt in my mind that she married Prince Michael, got stuck with Michael the man. The Duke of Kent married the Duchess of Kent for love, and it was a love match. Princess Alexandra married Angus Ogilvy, and that was a love match. And it was a love match in both directions. He was offered an earldom and turned it down. The Queen set on Prince Philip when she was very young, and despite her mother moving heaven and earth to get her to marry Charles Rutland was one of them, and there were others. Hugh Grafton. She was not deflected from the choice of her heart, despite the opposition. Princess Margaret's 2 loves, Peter Townsend and Tony Armstrong-Jones, were both love matches. She didn't go with her head, she went with her heart. Charles's marriage to Camilla proves he's gone with his heart. And I know as a fact that when he married Diana, he thought that they would end up having the relationship that he has ended up having with Camilla. Diana led him to believe that. Then once the wedding ring was on the finger, she dropped the act. Prince Andrew married Sarah Ferguson for love. Prince Edward married Sophie Rhys-Jones for love. Lady Davina Windsor, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester's daughter, married the Maori Gary Lewis for love. The Earl of Harwood, who was the Queen's first cousin, George Harwood, married. His mother was the previous Princess Royal. Married Marion Stein, who was Jewish. Then Patricia Tuckwell, who was an Australian musician, for love. Neither of those was an arranged marriage or for people who would fit the mold. Queen Victoria married Prince Albert for love. I could go on, but I think you've got the message. It's quite amazing that Harry doesn't also realise that William and Catherine married for love. He thought it a few years before he met Meghan. He thought it right until he met Meghan. Now he thinks to the contrary. Meghan, the great enlightener, the bringer of darkness. Lie number 40. Brexit was fed by racism as a result of immigration. This is totally outrageous. Brexit was not fed by immigration as a result of racism. Most of the immigrants to whom people objected were notional, not actual. We did not want open borders because nobody wanted to emigrate to Europe. All the immigrants didn't want to settle in Germany or France. I mean, look at what's happening on our borders. All those immigrants get to France and pay a shed load of money to come to England. Race had nothing to do with it. Most of the immigrants who were being excluded were white Europeans. They weren't black. So that's another line number 41. And I think I'm going to just have to start to read these out because otherwise this will take forever. Lie number 41. That all the rota is tabloid with one exception. The rota photographers and the rota system. Harry was making out that it's tabloids and that the respectable press have nothing to do with it. That's a lie. The Telegraph and the Times are not regarded as tabloids. They are regarded as broadsheet newspapers. So even if the Times has reduced the size of its newspaper, it's not a tabloid. So that's another lie. Lie number 42. That the British press and paparazzi were intrusive. Harry and Meghan lived at Kensington Palace, then in Windsor Great Park. In Frogmore Cottage, which is within the Windsor estate. The public had no access to them, nor did paparazzi. And there are no violations from the paparazzi or the press where Meghan and Harry were concerned of any consequence. Since the Leveson inquiry in 2012, the press has been remarkably non-invasive. Lie number 43. That the rota and the press are PR machines of the palace. This is a total lie. The rota system was created so that you would have a handful of journalists which would make the job easier for the royal family. So instead of having 20 or 30 journalists, you would have one journalist and a photographer who would cover the event and share the experience with all of the other rota journalists and the press generally. It is for the convenience of the royal family more than the convenience of the press. And so for them to be making out that the rota system somehow means that the press are assisting the royal family in betraying Harry and Meghan is insanity. I mean, you know, there have been very few instances of press violations. The most egregious was in 2012, and it didn't even involve a British publication. It was the French magazine Closer, which took a photograph of Kate topless. The British publications didn't even publish the picture. Line number 44 is furthered by Meghan's tearfulness and Harry's fear that the press are hounding Meghan, that she's being hunted like an animal the way Diana was. Sorry, the press has never published anything about Meghan that wasn't true and fair, even when they have been hammered. For instance, the Mail on Sunday was very fair in what it said about Meghan and her father. Meghan is the one who orchestrated that. And what Meghan and Harry seem to either don't know or hope we won't know is that Diana used to lay the scent for the press to follow. She used to phone up the journalists and tip off the paparazzi. Harry and Meghan are claiming to be followed by paparazzi, and there are no paparazzi following them. Line number 45. Doria suggests to Meghan that her treatment by the British has been racist. Well, that's just outrageous. I mean, Doria obviously has a big chip on her shoulder, but then I understand from a prince said to me yesterday, Doria doesn't have a chip on her shoulder. She has a bag full of potatoes. She does. How has the British people been racist? I'm sorry. You know, all these race baiters playing the racist drum. It's just outrageous. Line number 46. Harry says that a friend told them that they should document the period in their lives and they agreed to do it because of the misinformation that was out there about them. But the problem with that is they've been documenting things and taking photographs and having a record, visual and otherwise, from their second date. Who told them this? I'd love to know the name of the friend who told them this. I think they told each other. Line number 47. She pretends that the press violated her privacy and leaked the story about their relationship initially. But I understand that she's the one who planted that story. Could be doing her great injustice, but I don't think so. Line number 48. They dismiss the Queen's accomplishments with the Commonwealth as being Empire 2.0, and they have their people making this assertion and basically saying that the Commonwealth is a massive con to keep black people down and to keep white people rich and to keep the British in particular rich. I mean, you couldn't make it up if you tried. I mean, the Queen spends 70 years on the throne. She goes, according to Nelson Mandela and other leaders of colour, to great lengths to foster good relations between all the peoples of the Commonwealth. And they are dismissing her life's work and Prince Philip's life's work as a massive con. You couldn't make it up. Line number 49 is the accusation that the British etiquette is medieval. And interwoven with that is Meghan's surprise that when the royal family is in private, it doesn't pretend to be something that it isn't, and doesn't have a public act and a private act, and that it's got integrity. She is complaining that, gosh, these people are always well behaved and well mannered and formal, and nobody's gonna, well, now that the public isn't here, let's just show that we're swine and let's just be pseudo-animalistic and let's just hug each other to death because let's not be formal, let's be just informal, let's maybe eat with your hands as well. I mean, line number 50, no matter what I did, they were going to find a way to destroy me. Well, this is serious paranoia, but it's also very interesting that she would come out with it so boldly. First of all, she doesn't say who they actually are. Are they the press or the royal family, or, as is suggested by her and her cohorts, a combination of the two? Nobody was trying to destroy her. Nobody. People were trying to build her up. The Queen had high hopes of Meghan and Harry, doing sterling work for the Queen's Commonwealth charity, her foundation. I mean, she made them president and vice president. Meghan had a fewer assignments and engagements than anyone else, and the largest wardrobe of everybody, collectively. Yet, who was trying to destroy her? It's a brazen, outright lie. She was given all the support she needed, but she didn't want it. And I have to tell you, I know from people who are personally involved with the whole thing that Meghan spurned the approaches of Harry's friends as well. Meghan wanted to lay the ground for the fact that she was a misfit because nobody liked her. Well, she's the one who spurned them. I mean, you talk about madness. Lie number 51 is a Netflix lie, and it's done to further the racist agenda and to make out that the British royal family and the British aristocracy and the British nation generally are racist. They assert that there is racist imagery in Buckingham Palace and stately homes. Well, I suppose they'd regard my blackamoors as racist because I'm Jamaican and I love blackamoors. I also like statues of white people. If it's beautiful, I have it. If it's something that I like and I want to promote, I have it. That's what people do with their decorations, you dumbos. They do not put things they loathe in their house as decoration. But I'm going to show you how vicious the lie is, because there's no proof of any racial imagery, or I should say racist imagery, at Buckingham Palace. They show images from museums and stately homes that are owned by the National Trust and the official residence of the Lord Mayor of York, none of which have anything to do. Ironically, some of the objectionable things that they have chosen actually show affectionate relationships between slave and master. How they're going to reconcile that with their hate-filled vitriol is something else. But there's a painting of George IV being dressed by a black servant. That hangs in York Mansion House, the official residence of the Lord Mayor of York. Well, why would a king or a prince or any human being allow somebody who he hated and despised and regarded as inferior to dress him? Obviously, these people cannot have had servants or staff, because they obviously don't know that the relationship with servants, and I'm saying servants because staff encompasses other aspects as well, is usually one that's based on affection as well, and that the people you want to serve you are the ones you like and that you know like you. So right there, what is supposed to be racist is actually a sign of affection between George IV and the servant. Well, certainly George IV for the servant. There's a painting of the slave owner Edward Colston on his deathbed, and his hand is being kissed by a black servant, and this hangs in a museum in Bristol. He's the man whose statue was toppled because he was a slave owner. He also did a lot of wonderful work for and was an extremely generous benefactor, and not only in Britain, but with his slaves. Why would the slave have been kissing the hand of his dying master except because he was fond of him? Then there are 3 statues owned by the National Trust: a black cherub in Egyptian dress at the Cliveden estate, a sundial held up by a kneeling slave from Wentworth Castle in South Yorkshire, and a kneeling slave in chains holding up a shelf-shaped bowl at Durham Park in Gloucestershire. Nothing from Buckingham Palace or any of the royal residences. Oh dear, how are we going to struggle by with that lie? Unbelievable. I think I'm going to have to wrap this up. Sorry. I have more to do, but I will have to do them in an extra video. Sorry. Okay? Thanks. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and remember, keep the questions and comments coming in. This can't be done without you. God bless and goodbye.